Hey guys, we're going to get started. So let me introduce you guys to Dax Dasilva from Montreal. Dax is the founder and CEO of Lightspeed, a suite of retail tools. It was founded in 2005, and I think he'd say it's probably been an awesome ride since then, but we'll get into that. Dax has been named Quebec's Entrepreneur of the Year in 2012, and they recently raised last November, I think it was, another $35 million as a Series B from Accel Partners, who also invested in Facebook. So let's give a huge startup grind at Ottawa. Welcome to Dax.
Thanks, Marco.
Thanks so much for coming out, man.
Of course, yeah, my pleasure.
So we always like to start off by getting to know a little bit more about you. So where are you from, and what was your early family life like?
Yeah, so I'm from Vancouver originally, yeah, been in Montreal for about 14 years. I mean, early days, I was a early Mac nerd. So I think I got my first Mac when I was 12. By 13, I was working at a Mac developer,
awesome.
kind of programming and doing kind of nerding out. So that's a lot of my childhood was like that, and also I think I also had a lot of interest in design. So I was like had a lot of interest in typography. Did things like yearbook and was like interested in the arts as well. Yeah.
Cool. And so, what did you study in school? Is that where your passion for entrepreneurship developed, or did that come from a family?
Yeah, so I did, like, all through my teens and through my university years, I did a lot of consulting. So I did either tech support or I did software development. And so for the forestry companies, for a lot of the Apple dealerships, I built software, did tech support for them, and kind of enjoyed that. By the time I got to university, I did a year of computer science because it just seemed logical. But after programming, all those years, I was like, I kind of dropped out after 1 year. Yeah. I was like, there's no way I'm going to do 4 years of statistics and engineering. It just wasn't my brain. So I took a year off, did a full year of consulting, and then came back and did religion and art, and continued with that for 3 years.
That's amazing. And so, what was your early family life like? Like, were some of your parents entrepreneurial or grandparents? Where did the passion to start your own thing kind of come from? Yeah,
so there wasn't there wasn't really that in my family. My grandparents moved from India to Africa to work in the British civil service, and so there's like a real mentality of having a safe government job, and so there wasn't really the This is Ottawa.
Exactly. I think people,
familiar, yeah. So there wasn't really that entrepreneurial thing. Although my father worked for two German industrialists, two twins, and over his 35, 40 years with that company, I watched through his eyes. He was kind of the right hand man of one of the twins. I got to see that company expand and contract, and actually, the Mac developer I apprenticed at was one of their sons. So it was kind of like saw companies kind of like grow and contract and go into all sorts of different projects. So I think that kind of got me excited about business.
That's awesome. So coming to Lightspeed, can you tell us a little bit about what it is now and what originally sparked the idea?
Yeah. So like I said, I was always interested in the Mac, and so I was always working for or with different Apple dealers before there were Apple stores. So when I moved to Montreal, I had this fanciful idea that I would never have to learn any French, and I could just work on internet websites remotely and do what I wanted. That lasted about a few months, and I had to find a job. So I worked at an Apple dealership that had 4 stores, 1 in Ottawa and 3 in Quebec. And I did tech support there for a couple months, and I was ready to quit because they wouldn't send me anywhere because I couldn't speak French, and I liked doing the on-the-road stuff. I couldn't fix anything with my hands. So just as I was about to quit, they kind of discovered that I built software, and they asked me to build a system to run all the 4 stores. So it took me 2.5 years, and then my boss's very messy divorce took down that whole company. So after rolling out the system and everything, his affair kind of
superseded.
Yeah, and so I was at that point I was burnt out on software. I'd built this day and night for close to 3 years, That's when I started to learn how to produce music and wanted to be a DJ and do something completely different. But I got pulled back in. A lot of the people that had worked, in sales or in tech support for that dealership had gone to smaller Apple shops, and I kept on getting bugged. When are you gonna compile a version for us? Or I'm like, well, I can't. It's in a drawer of some creditor. And so I decided to build something from scratch. But it was just going to do quoting and invoicing. It wasn't going to go into everything, but of course it eventually did. Yeah, I couldn't say no to all the things that had to be added over time. So that's how Lightspeed got started, and started with like 4 people, me and 3 friends, and some of those worked out, and some of them don't. One of them is going to celebrate our 10-year anniversary. We're going to be turning 10 in March, and one of them is still with the company.
Congratulations.
So there's 2 of us. Yeah. So yeah, it was the early days of Lightspeed were interesting. We didn't really have any shame in selling our beta. We built this software that was, I think had an initial interest with Apple dealerships, and they're pretty good retailers in terms of building a system that can kind of work with lots of different other types of retailers, because they do floor sales, they do corporate sales, they do repair, they do, and they have complexity, they have serial numbers, they have suppliers in multiple currencies, they have, really complex purchasing. So, building a system for them was, was something that once we were done with that, we could apply a lot of the different pieces to other types of retailers. Yeah.
Sure. So you and 4 friends started coding this piece of software again back in 2005.
Yeah.
How did you guys get the first customers? Was it those Apple people, or outside of Apple? How did you get your first customers?
Yeah, so that was that first dealership that gave me like $4,000 for for me to custom build it and give free upgrades for life. And they sold.
There you go. That sounds like a good deal.
Free upgrades for life. And so he actually sold it to a furniture store and a spa, and that was our original beta set of customers. And that's where, and then we kind of ran into a bit of luck with bumping into the Apple Dealer Association in the U.S. at a Macworld Expo. And what happened after that is 150 dealerships bought the software. And so we never took funding for the first 7 years, because those 150 dealerships became our distribution partners. Mm-hmm. So when we reached 2.0 and were ready to go more public with it, we suddenly had 200, almost 300 resellers that had over the last 2 years come to our training camps, and now we're ready to go sell it in their neighborhoods. And this was around the time when Apple was starting to open their own stores and compete with these guys, and they wanted to start selling solutions. So they could sell Lightspeed, which they knew. They could sell hardware. They could sell networking. They could sell consulting, the whole thing. So our initial customers kind of funded the company, and then they became our distribution.
That's perfect. That's like the dream scenario, I think. So what were some of the next steps? How did you guys go from selling to 150 dealers to then needing funding?
Yeah. So we did. So at the 3-year mark, we'd kind of finish our business plan, and actually we just bought our first building. Hired this guy over here, Andrew Penny, to be our strategic advisor. He would come from Ottawa a couple monthly and work with us. And from years 3 to 7, we really ramped the company. Built out that reseller network, invested a lot. We were doing 2 training camps a year in different cities, and by 2011. We had our software on mobile and iPad and Mac, and at that point we were, I don't have a finance background, so I wasn't very savvy with the investment community, or didn't know much about that. But we were starting to get a lot of inbound interest, and we were always really good at trade shows. We always put on, the largest booth at Macworld Expo. We always put on we always believed in the value of that, and we did NRF, which was the retail trade show in New York, and Excel Partners, the investors of Facebook, they'd sent a scout. There was one of many that we talked to. They came to visit us in Montreal shortly thereafter, and two weeks later we had a term sheet.
Wow!
So crazy. It was pretty quick, but we had really strong chemistry with them. and do to this day.
Yeah, obviously. So you guys ended up raising a total so far of $65 million, again, primarily from Cell Partners, one of the early backers of Facebook. So, I mean, they came to you, but what was the process that you guys followed in terms of raising that? And then, why did you guys go after a Series B pretty recently?
We didn't go through much of a process the first time.
Okay.
Basically, they seemed like, they came to us, they were pretty much top tier, the kinds of people that we want to work with, and really they got along with us on a personal level, and I felt like we could learn a lot. We didn't have any connections in the valley. We didn't have any. We were very, very focused on our little bubble in Montreal and our resellers and our employees and our customers, and so they kind of opened a lot of doors, and they started to help us operate on a different level with metrics and data and systems, and so yeah, that was a huge from 2012 to today, which is when they invested, we went from 50 people to 280 people today in 7 cities. So wow. They really them coming in, I think, was at the right time too, because 7 years of knowing who you are, I think, is, maybe it's not necessary for every company to go that long, with discovering yourself, but I think it was helpful for us, and I wouldn't change it.
Well, you had a product, you had customers, you had revenue, so it makes sense to just kind of come in and kind of keep growing that thing. So what about growing up in Montreal as a company? How does the Montreal ecosystem how's it helped you guys or hindered you guys, and what's it like expanding to different markets?
Yeah, so we never really sold much in Quebec itself. I've always thought it's probably one of the most amazing places to build something. I always feel like Montreal is like a blank canvas. It's very creatively fulfilling for myself, and there's lots of inspiring things going on, and so there's educated workforce and a lot of young talent, and it was a really great place to bootstrap a company. I think all Canadian cities are inexpensive, good places to start company. You also have we had really good government support as well, so yeah, I wouldn't change a thing.
So 14 years later, you picked up any French, or?
I'm doing 2 lessons a week now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I mean, with some of that growth that we've seen and expanding to different cities and picking up a Series B, what's next for Lightspeed in 2015? Anything that you can share with us? Any big plans?
Yeah, so we did retail for 9 years, and never ventured into we went to the cloud. We did we'd made some acquisitions, but this last summer we acquired a company in Belgium to go into restaurants. So we want to be the operating system for every business on Main Street. And we think that by doing the retailers with complexity, the retailers that manage inventory, and doing restaurant, the premium restaurants and the premium retail, that we can we can access the independent business owner and really kind of connect them and give them tools to really thrive. We're not really selling to huge chains. We're selling to the businesses that we kind of know and love, the ones that are the independent owner operators. And so I think we felt that moving into restaurants with it's not the same type of person that starts a retail store versus a restaurant, but it's the same kind of spirit, and that's something we wanted to tap into. So that's a big project for us. It's mostly selling in Europe, but we're now selling it in New York, and we're selling it soon in Canada once we've got there's certain regulations for fiscal printing and stuff like that in Quebec, etc.
Awesome. Yeah. Any plans for things like iPay or anything like that too? Or?
Apple Pay.
Apple Pay.
Yeah, Apple Pay we have on our restaurant platform and our on-premise on-site platform for retail, and it'll be coming to our other retail platforms soon.
Cool.
So yeah, I think it's Apple Pay is interesting because the one thing that retailers kind of really need to do now is kind of create that relationship with the customer and start to build a purchase history with the customers, that they can know the preferences and they can really make the visit into the store tailored. And the challenge with something like Apple Pay is that it makes the whole thing very anonymous to the retailer. You know, it's a randomized token. You can't, you know, like even a credit card's better with being able to identify that customer when they return. And so, so there's some great things about it in terms of security, but there's also some challenges for the independent retailer or restaurateur to build a relationship. So those are some of the things that we're kind of focused on.
Mindful of, for sure. That's cool. That's good to know. So were there any like major challenges along the way? Anything that like stands out that like you felt like you had to beat your head against the wall almost? Or?
Yeah, I think we started in 2005, so cloud-based systems were not prevalent, and we were a Mac shop primarily. So adding cloud services to what we were doing. Now all of our products have have that component, but bringing that knowledge to the company and doing making that transition and going to all subscription, I think that was a big challenge that I think is behind us, and we're excited about all the ways that we're implementing cloud across our product lines. And I think other big challenges were like systems, and also we've got implementing a system like Salesforce. I think it took us 4 attempts. It was really complicated with all the resellers and all the different ways that our different products are sold, and we've bought 2 companies, so how do we integrate licensing for all of those things in Salesforce? We spent a ton of money and had it fail many times. So those are the kinds of challenges that I think were the hardest, but at the end of the day, I think it helped us like leap way forward. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you tell us a little bit more, like how do you handle that from a consumer side? Like how do you take your customers through the evolution of the technology, the software, the hardware, the different, what's available in the market?
Well, yeah. So I mean, in like at least for our customer, there's a lot of customers that will make an investment in point of sale, and they're not going to want to revisit that investment for another 8 years, 10 years. Now there's new customers that are coming to the table, and they may want something different, and so I think you have to take care of your customers no matter what they're using, and then have things available to them like Apple Pay when it happens, and try to adapt, and the definition of retail is changing completely. So adding e-commerce and omni-channel to making that easy for people that have a lot to do in their day, like a retailer today is expected to do so much, with the same amount of resources, and they've got a lot stacked against them. So, multiplying their abilities, through software is something that we kind of have to do, but we can't overwhelm people either.
Were there any like major channels or strategies along the way that you guys used to really continue to grow and push, year over year, some of your sales and acquire new customers? You mentioned trade shows was a really good thing for you guys. Was there anything else that really worked?
Obviously partners. I think that type of distribution really worked for us. Although when we became more and more cloud based, there was less and less things for partners to install. And so the partners that worked out are the ones that adapted to selling different types of services. I think another big one for us was we moved everybody to the high velocity sales model, which I don't know if has anybody heard of that? Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, it's a methodology that is pretty impressive. When you've got a big sales team, and we've probably got about 80-ish people in the different parts of the sales team. We can go from a lead to a closed deal in 7 days. Wow. So it's high velocity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
how do you do that? Can you share some secrets or?
Yeah. Well, I guess as you get bigger of a sales team, you can kind of specialize people. When you have a small sales team, people wear different hats. But there's some people that are better at the early part of the sale. They like to consult. They don't want to feel like a salesperson. They want to just talk about the solutions and generalities. And then there's other people that are really good at closing. And then there's other people that are really good at demoing. And so high velocity kind of puts them on this hyper fast path that gets them to all these people, where all these people get to keep doing what they're really good at, and so you profile all the different people in your organization and make them do those roles and have all of it connect really well through like a tool like Salesforce, for example.
That's awesome. That's crazy. So if you were to start over again, what would you do differently?
I mean, I'd probably take funding earlier, but not super early. Maybe maybe in year 3 or 4.
Okay. And so, like, how do you now, a whole bunch of years later with 150 or so employees, how do you maintain focus? What continues to motivate you, and what does a typical day look like?
So I've kind of stepped back and step back into product. I'm doing a lot more with the product teams, and I think that's a lot of fun. And so a lot of my day is working with doing one-on-ones with development directors or product managers, folks like Jerica over there. There's some Lightspeed folks in the audience here. Connecting with them, finding out what's going on with all the different product lines, I think is kind of what takes up a lot of my day now. It didn't always. There was a couple years where I did a lot of PR or other things, but right now I have a personal focus on products, so that's probably half my day. The other half is working with my CFO and Chief Revenue Officer as well, on strategy and other things. And yeah.
Cool, that's awesome. So how do you maintain focus between jumping back at those different areas of the business?
How do I keep focused?
Yeah.
I think we set focuses. I think at every there's a weekly exec meeting where we all try to keep ourselves focused, because there could be so many things that we could be doing, and we already have many product lines, and we already have a lot of split focuses, and so taking on new things is almost sinful. We can't really do that to ourselves, because we only have 100% of your time. There's only so much you can do well, and so I think we also get when we do our board meetings or our board calls, we also get a reminder of that, and when you have to express it to your board of what have you been focusing on, it keeps you real in terms of what you set your focuses to be for the next quarter or for the next year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So setting those focuses and realizing that you have limitations, how do you, when something new is presented or when there's a new opportunity like Apple Pay, how do you actually go through and evaluate whether that makes sense for you guys as a company and for your customers?
Yeah, I think we have to be honest with what can we really bump, or what can we really kind of add resources to do, and throwing resources and money at a problem or new things doesn't always work out when you're almost 300 people, right? So it's
300.
Yeah, it starts to there is overhead to everything, and so it's not necessarily that having huge development teams gets you more, lets you do more projects. I think it's small focus teams can do some amazing things, and adding more distractions and focuses can actually really derail things. Is a good observation. We've done it many times, so it's something that we're really careful to try not to do.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, what do you think the rest of the future holds for you and Lightspeed? Like, what are you going to be doing in 5 years or 10 years?
I guess celebrating 15 and 20 year anniversaries. I don't know. I think retail is at the beginning of a big transformation. I get really scared when I go drive down the street and I see retail stores closing. We've lost bookstores, we've lost music stores, we've lost video stores, never to return. And people are buying a lot online, but there is lots of hope. Like companies like Apple and Bonobos and Warby Parker and Frank and Oak have opened retail stores, and that's because you feel a brand in 3 dimensions. That's how you connect with something more than I'm sure you can emotionally connect with a website, but there is something special about the store that those retailers understand, and that independent retailers understand really well. And so I want to make sure that we do everything we can to make sure that those businesses, retail or restaurant, are thriving with tools that kind of allow them to focus on their customers and focus on curating products.
Mm-hmm. And do you do any kind of mentorship with other startups or entrepreneurs in and around Montreal? And if so, what type of advice do you give to them?
I mean, I think the main piece of advice that is to actually build a business that will make some money. Because that's I think. If the early story of Lightspeed is we were always trying to sell even if it wasn't 100% ready, if it was in beta or whatever, we always tried to bring money in and so that we could grow, so there, you're not going to be the next Snapchat, most likely. You're going to have to build a revenue model, and you're going to want to build from your own steam, because it gives you integrity and it gives you pride, and so that's often a little difficult for some products to get right away, especially in a SaaS-based world. And we were selling at the beginning on-premise software, so we would get $2,000 or $3,000 up front or more, and so that's easier. But I think that if you can find a way to get, if you're building business software, you're building something that you can charge a license where you can get a good few $1,000s per license or per whatever. Then you have something that you can start to go to shows with, hire people with. Otherwise, it's going to be challenging. You're going to have to raise money. You're going to have to give away a lot of your company. You're going to have to start taking directions from other people more quickly than you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of first-time founders have an issue with charging for their product or right away. And I think you mentioned it earlier. You guys weren't shy about charging for the beta. Do you think it has something to do with being in the B2B space a little bit more than B2C, or do you think B2C founders can do the same?
Yeah, I can't speak to that because I don't have any experience there. But another thing that we did learn is there was a product on the Mac that we really admired when we were looking at our pricing, and we figured we'd charge around the same as them, and one of the friends of the company said ×4, and we're like ×4, and that made all the difference. We were able to do so much, fast forwarding many years, we were able to do so much more than that company, which seemed like a towering success at the time, and it was because we weren't afraid to charge more. The perception was that the product was worth more, and we made it worth what we felt, what we were charging. We were forced to deliver that level of value also. So I think that you shouldn't be afraid to charge what it's worth, and you always find that the Lightspeed products cost a bit more than the competitors, and we and I think that founders have to assign the appropriate value and multiply it by 4.
Pick the number.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what are there any books or tools that you're using a lot recently, or that you've read for books? And
yeah, I read a really good book on the advice of my CFO. It's the new book by Ben Horowitz, from Andreessen Horowitz, The Hard Thing About Hard Things. You guys read it? Yeah. Oh, read it. Okay, fine. But yeah, it's pretty good. If for those of you who haven't read it, it's every chapter kind of wraps really quickly, and it's you get a lesson. It's short, succinct, and it's pretty riveting for a business book.
Absolutely, yeah. It's pretty intense. It's, The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz.
Yeah.
I didn't read it. I grabbed the audio. I capped out over a flight, but it was really good.
Yeah.
Any apps or anything like that? Anything else to recommend?
Any apps?
Yeah, like productivity-wise, or just
Yeah, you
Clash
know.
of Clans. I don't know.
Well, actually, a friend of mine just put out a new game, which is like just got reviewed in Wired and New York Times from Toronto. It's called Alto's Adventures. You guys downloaded that? Yeah. Yeah, you should check it out. I think it's pretty. I think it's beautiful.
I'll have to check it out.
It's beautifully done. Yeah.
What's the name of the studio?
Snowman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And I like to ask this just to a few select guests. So you count yourself among the selected. If you were to have a superpower, what would it be and why?
It would be flight.
Flight? Nice.
Flight.
Why?
Why?
Yeah, why?
Why? Of course.
Why not?
Why not? Yeah. I mean, I think it's always cool to, you know, whenever you have those aerial photographs and show you, I mean, it's showing you like everything from above. I mean, I think it's the best view, and also you can see all the great things mankind is doing, all the destruction. So you can have a better, you know, I think that would be fun. You know, probably be. I think we're not privy to all, you know, what the birds can.
What the world has.
What they can enjoy.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I'm going to flip it over to the crowd because I'm sure you guys have some amazing questions for Dax. Yes, right here up front. I'll start with you.
So, look, two questions. I was really surprised that you didn't say anything about building your team. Like,
Oh,
you
yeah.
have 300 people, and like, was there, not my understanding or my experience is when you get to about 100, your company changes and it can become really bureaucratic.
Mhm.
So, like, where was your biggest challenge in that growth path? And the second question is mobile. I mean, if I understand this correctly, you've got a cloud-based system that's doing point of sale and inventory, and it's working on a machine somewhere. Do you think you have to change your system to incorporate mobile? Like, will store people have mobile and it'll all be doing mobile, or is mobile just an add-on?
Okay, so the first question was team.
Yeah.
So I mean, over the course of 10 years, I would say that the leadership has kind of changed 3 times, you know, like at a senior level. So I think that at different stages of the company, you know, and I'm not above like being changed out at some point too. I mean, like you have to have a degree of humility that the company goes through different stages and has different needs at different moments, you know, and you know, I'm really happy that there's a lot of people. Like I just made a list today for the 10-year anniversary who's been with us for more than 5 years. You know, it's great to have some of those original people. But yeah, there's so many new people, especially lately. You know, a lot of that 300s in the last 2 years. So there's definitely challenges, especially since we acquired companies, and so there's, you know, a bulk of the company, 200's in Montreal, but we're also split into different buildings because we don't have our new office till April, and then all these little offices of 20 people. So how do you make all these people feel connected? You know, kind of in small ways. You know, like you know, I kind of get down there and like, you know, do company emails like fairly often, you know, to show what people are doing, because people will send me photos of what they're doing, or I'll get to know from a high level, or ask for people to submit things, and I'll compile something and send them out, just so that people all feel like we're all on the same page. And then we'll do these company meetings where, you know, people are all connected and kind of get a reset so that we're all kind of like thinking along the same lines, and so. And there's like, because we're just so distributed, there's a lot of video conferencing and hip chat and things like that. And you know, one of the things that has really rallied the company is we've got a I don't know, do you guys know what NPS means? Net Promoter Score. So a customer, you ask a customer, you know, would you recommend Lightspeed to a friend or colleague? And they can rate from 0 to 10. And really only a 9 or a 10 is a good score. Everything else is, you know, everything from 0 to 6 is terrible. 7 or 8 are persuadable, you know, to go to a higher thing. And so we've got a ticker in our hip chat room where the whole company can see like the pulse of what customers think, and so there's a lot of discussions around that. And so we all kind of have the whole company thinking about the same thing. And so things like that kind of help, you know, and people refer to, you know, what comment people make, because we pull people in the software. So that's on team. There's lots of little, you know, techniques and tricks, and you know, for something like Valentine's Day, we'll do something across all the offices and just silly things. But people care about that stuff. And then on mobile, Yeah, so mobile's getting trickier because in 2011 we had mobile with the swipe. We worked in a partnership with Apple to have the same thing for our retailers that they have in the Apple Store. So we had that. We had mobile iPad. We've really pushed mobile iPad as an interactive sale. It's getting more complicated because of things like EMV. In the States where there's chip cards and things are becoming a little bit less mobile. Because there's fixed stations and the hardware is not quite there yet for, the whole industry's behind on this EMV changeover that's happening in October in the States. So I think we're going backwards a little bit in terms of mobile retail because swipes are not secure, and so that's why they've brought in all this chip technology. We're actually ahead of the curve in Canada, but we've got so few providers that there's nothing really for us as a innovator to kind of integrate with. So I think that in a couple of years you'll see very mobile, very secure technology.
Right here in the front, and then Alex.
Yeah. So in these days, you see lots of online retail happening.
Yeah.
And that is kind of not going with what you envision. So do you plan to move or compete with online retail, or have any kind of product?
Yeah, we have integrations with Magento, Shopify. We also have our own e-commerce system, which is the approach we're taking with our own e-commerce system is, what would a brick and mortar store that's primarily an independent retailer, what do they want out of e-commerce? I don't think it's the same thing as somebody that's based out of a warehouse or that's making crafts. There's different scenarios of how people are retailing online. So if I'm opening a store, there's definitely a different mindset, a different way of what that store is for, what that online store is for. And at the moment, we do think it will change, and there'll be many different scenarios and cases of what do people start an online store first and a physical store second, or I think there's going to be different scenarios, but for the moment I think that a lot of people that are doing in-store and then going online as a second step, they're using online to keep their customers abreast of what their curation is today. Like what's new. What's to re-engage with that customer, to keep the conversation going with that customer. So,
Alex.
You were saying before that your sales team can close a lead in 7 days. Like, that makes my mind blow. So, what are you feeding them to make them run so fast? Like, how are you fueling this exponential growth?
Coming. Lots coming.
Yeah, your team.
I think it's process. Yeah, it's process. We have amazing sales leaders. Our head of revenue is fantastic, and he's also we've also got an equivalent to him in Europe, and we have it now separate for North America. We have a New York kind of Eastern kind of VP as well. That's so we're kind of like replicating this process, and in different places. And it seems like, for example, we bought this restaurant POS company and we brought it into our systems and rebranded it and everything in 7 weeks. And it was part of our sales process. I think they had maybe 400 to 500 installations when we acquired them, and we did 200 last month. So as part of the process, I think it's something that can ramp quickly, and I think it's worth, if you're interested in the model, it's worth really looking into how it works or how different people have implemented it. High velocity. It's self-serve has always been the holy grail, but I think a lot of companies have come around to also the value of sales teams and what it can bring. And I'm a big believer that that has to be a part of your strategy.
Absolutely.
It depends on the product, of course. Yeah.
Sure, thanks.
Couple more questions? Yeah, go ahead.
How did you deal with the balance of salary and equity in the early days, and how do you deal with it now?
Okay. Yep. So I actually didn't give out any equity for the first 3 years. I didn't have any co-founders. I kind of had a sense that that the original people, I wasn't sure how long people would be around. You know, I think a startup can be a pretty grueling environment. You know, I was doing the business part during the day and was up till 4 in the morning every day programming for like 2 or 3 years. You know, and some people are into that. Other people were not, and some people. One thing we definitely discovered is that the people you have early in the company, you know, they're wearing lots of hats. Everybody's full of enthusiasm, but one of the challenges might be that when people that are highly skilled come into the company, sometimes people can get intimidated, and then there can be power plays, and there can be, you know, things can change. You know, as the company grows and you're attracting better and better talent, the earlier people either grow with the company and become keystones of the company, or they don't. You know, and so if you can make those decisions later, you know, when the company's a little bit knows a little bit more about itself, that would be my advice. Now I think we give equity to everybody that joins. Yeah.
So now we're looking at questions.
Stock options that vest over multiple years. Yeah.
Sure, real quick.
Yeah. How do you hire from there? You talked about hiring, so.
Yeah, we have like every big department, like, you know, sales, development, operations, they all have their own business partner in HR, and that person understands those large departments very well, and kind of what they need, and kind of you know, make sure that there's a pipeline for certain types of profiles and people, because like, so let's say for example in sales, you know, there's always low performers that might drop out, you know, and you need to be able to have people that can replace them.
There's one right here. Yep.
Yeah.
What's your opinion about credit cards and banks? So in this space, are they going to get rolled over by Apple Pay, or are they going to fight back and win?
There's, you know, there's so many different layers, right? You know, when you make a credit card transaction, there's so many different people along the way that take a cut. And, you know, we started a payments project last year, and we backed away a little bit from it, and there's a lot of complexity in there on purpose. And for companies that have kind of tried to cut away layers and simplify, you know, examples might be Braintree or Stripe or Square. You know, even they have had to contend with some of the different layers. So there's a lot of vested interest. You know, I think the one company that could really upend things is probably Apple. There could be the Bank of Apple. You know, it's a $700 billion company. It's probably going to be the world's first $1 trillion company. You know, I think the Bank of Apple could be a reality in our lifetime, and I'm sure that you know, every person under 20 would be banking with Apple. You know, so.
Yeah, I saw a stat related to that there when they hit their highest quarter a couple weeks ago, that Apple could afford to give everyone in the world $25. Brennan?
Just because we got onto the finance conversation,
Yeah.
It's going to happen. Bitcoin. So I know you talked about like the need to connect with a consumer, and
Yeah.
exactly in your space, totally understand why. And I know Bitcoin is kind of one of those, it sort of distances the connectivity, but do you see it as something that your retailers are actually asking for yet,
No.
or no, not at all? But is it in the plans at all for you guys?
There are so many things. Like, I think that retailers get really annoyed when we work on stuff like that, instead of the report that they've been asking for like 4 years. You know, there's like you know, am I right, guys? So, you know, like right, and you know, like for example, you know, there was all this pressure for a long time to integrate with Google Wallet or PayPal Wallet, or you know, and thank God we didn't, because nobody wanted that. You know, nobody was asking for it. Nobody was, you know, we could have, you know, spent all our development resources, you know, working on that, and you know, so you know, if there's an opportunity for us to do something for independent retailers that's really going to give them an advantage over big box or online, then we'll definitely do it, because we're expected to be like a mini ERP for their needs. But I think we need we need to hear it from them. Yeah.
Chris?
You mentioned that you guys track NPS now. When you guys were first growing, were there a few key metrics that you guys used to track pretty religiously?
Sales. Yeah.
One metric that matters. Yeah.
My name's David. So, Dash, I noticed that Lightspeed has the APIs and all that.
Yep.
So you can build apps for Lightspeed, right? When you gonna get the app store for Lightspeed?
Yeah, so we've been pretty active with our partner program this year, and Tattoo Hero can attest to that. There's some really cool stuff that people are. There's a lot of players that are building things around Lightspeed. Like there's a company called Chronogolf that's got a golf booking software that uses Lightspeed as a transaction engine, and they build all the booking and scheduling around it. And there's lots of people that have plugged into different parts and let us do the part that's a Lightspeed. Like the point of sale itself is brandable, so you can kind of customize it and make the solution that you sell to your end user look like it was custom. Like, for example, we work with the Kardashians. They're one of our customers. They love to see their own pictures, and so like it looks like when you go into their store and look at their systems, it looks like they built $1 million system. They're only paying $80 a month for us.
Four times.
Exactly. Yeah.
More questions? Yeah, just here on the right, and then we'll.
Yeah, how much does it cost? You said $80 a month. What's the upfront cost? Or is there-
Yeah, there isn't. We used to. I mean, I think that is at this point it's $80 a month. A lot of people prepay though. There is incentives for retailers to pay for an annual, and I think it helps. It helps us because I think a retail system takes effort to get it going. Like they have to put in their inventory, they've got to do a bunch of things. So getting them to pay up front makes them put a little bit of skin in the game. And when you're opening a retail store, 1 year of Lightspeed is a small drop compared to probably what all the other things that you're doing. And so making that commitment is not that hard for most people. But I would recommend that. If you're a founder at a startup, that you do have some kind of, especially in the early days, maybe later you can drop it, but get some upfront, payment. Because I know that when we were selling perpetual licenses, that made the whole difference. It would definitely be harder to start today if we were only SaaS and people could do the, if we were expected to sign up customers and they would all be only paying $80 a month. How do we, be able to hire people? It would be challenging. So an upfront fee is one way to get there.
Yes.
Well, a bit of a cheeky question, but I just wanted to ask you, what do you actually do during the day? So,
Me?
Yeah, I mean, you started out as a techie, and are you an HR guy, or a strategy guy, or a customer relations guy? So how do you spend the biggest part of your day?
I'd say product. I would spend a lot of time with the product managers, and less, a little bit with development directors, but the product managers would be like, and that whole product management team, like the UX people, the UI people, the people designing the features, the people in product marketing. Those are the things that I'm interested in and can contribute to, and then I can help. Sometimes there's only one person in the room that can say, no, we're not going that far, or we must fix this, or we must do that, and that's usually me that can make that call of like, we're over engineering this, or that's where I think I can save us time sometimes, or send us in the wrong direction occasionally. But so I mean that's where I'm focused now. That it's changed over the years. There's times when I was a programmer. I was the primary coder for 2005 to 2009, and now they're trying to get rid of all that code and won't let me in near anything. Yeah.
So in terms of customer attraction, are you trying to go after any large retailers, national level, international, that have over, let's say, 500 locations?
No.
Is there a reason for that?
I think that we've always, our investors were always really excited. Can't you get a marquee Halo customer? You know, that, well, you know, Square did that with Starbucks, you know, and that's a mess. You know, like I think it cost them a ton of time and resources. They never ended up, you know, getting really anything out of that. You know, what you're going to end up doing with, for us at least, and your model can definitely be to work with the large chains, because maybe your service only applies to, you know, large chains. For us, being good at large chains and small independent retailers, it's not the same thing, you know, because a large company is going to want you, they're not going to understand the conversation, the sales conversation, when they're like, well, why can't you customize all these things to, you know, like, we're not having the same conversation with them as that Oracle's having with them. You know, Oracle's got a professional services team that's ready to custom build anything, you know. And that's just the reality, and that IT manager is going to be like, what are you guys talking about? You know, to us. So it's totally different. Now, that being said, I think that with, if you're a cloud platform, there's more things that people can do with your platform out of the box and can build around it. And that's where we're seeing some larger and larger chains take what we have, build around it, connect it with their own tools, and utilize it in their own way. Now, Adidas has been a big customer of ours since 2009, and that's what they do with our product. You know, the Boston Marathon, for example, runs on Lightspeed. There's like dozens and dozens of, like, you know, maybe 60 stations. And so they use, and we never hear from them in tech support. You know, they've built their own solution around their large marketing events, like the Boston Marathon and other similar events. They might have maybe 10 to 12 happening in any given month. And so if they can take it and do, you know, their own integrations with SAP, which is in their case, or whatever, then who knows? You know, you could probably scale it, but we're not chasing it ourselves.
Crazy. Alex, and then we'll go back.
A lot of, well, most people anyway, believe that, you know, really, really successful CEOs of big companies, you know, they got that way because they really sort of married their company and they fell in love with it at an early age, and, you know, they really invested all their heart and soul into it. How did you go from, like, I knew you back in the day when you were with Silva, actually.
Yeah.
And how did you grow it to such an unbelievable, you know, to such an unbelievable state? Watch your, you know, senior executives rotate in, rotate out, and still maintain love for your business. Bit of a sucky question, but.
Yeah, it's you know, it's a little bit of a cold reality, right? I mean, the business becomes so many different things over different years. You know, it's this last period with the investors it's a completely different company. You know, and so. I don't think that every type of person might be happy. You know, every type of person can't be happy in the company at different stages. You know, thankfully I have been. You know, but there's lots of founders that don't find themselves at their company, like you know, after a certain period of time. You know, and so I think as long as you feel like you can contribute to the company at that stage, you know, maybe if we're a public company, you know, I might not be the right guy. You never know. You know, I've never been good at finance, but you can learn. You know, and I think you know, a great example is our you know, our director of HR, which I think, and our investors always say, we think she's probably the best HR person in our portfolio, and she grew up with the company. You know, and is very critical of her own skills, but is marvelous. You know, and so there's always. There's always the ability to grow the company, but then if you find that it's just not matching where you are right now and you want to do other challenges and you're sick of the Lightspeed high velocity sales model, you might need to go somewhere else, and you know, it's just how it goes. Yeah.
Yes.
A couple of questions around acquisitions. Have you been the target of anyone trying to acquire you before? If so,
no comment.
Who would some of the bigger players be that might be interested? And with that decision now, because of your involvement with venture capital, did you give up that decision-making ability? How much of a part can you play in it versus your partners?
Are you talking about being acquired or acquiring?
Being acquired. Because they're probably looking for a big exit, either IPO or.
I mean, the pattern for us is to acquire. You know, like for a company that hasn't, that's not public, we've done 2 pretty big acquisitions, which usually you have to have public currency in order to do. But I think it's just a little bit in our DNA. Like, I think it's just the people involved that makes that easier for us to do. And so that's really where we've kind of spent our time, is more trying to buy and less trying to be sold. I think that's really.
So then the ultimate goal is to one day go public?
That's scary, but yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the trajectory, and I think I don't think there's I read an interesting article the other day that there's lots of private companies that are opting not to do that right away, because it's really just another way to raise funds. And if you can do M&A, which is having a public currency is one way, allows you to do more M&A. If you can pull that off without having to be public and be under all that scrutiny and have to then there may not be a pressing reason to do so, but I think that it would definitely make widen our options in terms of what we could do and how far we could expand. So it's appealing.
David?
Oh, I thought you had another. Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, then behind you, and then.
You mentioned Net Promoter Score before, and I'm just interested in the whole customer success management movement. And is that something you guys have looked at as you've grown? Are you still in a traditional tech support model? How does support work?
Yeah, actually, so I think we are evolving to. I think we'd like to evolve to a model where we can see utilization in the software, and we can see what we can kind of almost calculate what stage of utilization and what stage of success a customer's at because of all the different points in the software, or how many products they've created, or how many sales they've done, or how many how many images they've inputted for their e-com, or do they have e-com running, or do they have mobile running? I think that all of those things can be tracked back to how successful the store does, and how much they are committed to the product too, for our benefit. And so I think that's something we're moving towards. I think that's maybe what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah. And there's one company that does this really, really well that I spoke to once. I think it's they're in Ontario. The Point Click Care. They do senior home management software, and they've got this down to a science. It's quite an amazing example of that done really well.
Take 2 more questions after yours, sir.
Okay. So a bit of a follow-on question to the gentleman on the other side of the room. Canada is not renowned as being a country that generates new large companies, and the Canadian profile, with respect, I think, is that people like to cash out and don't live in the cottage. So, I mean, you're a younger guy. What you've done is great. Do you see yourself cashing out and going and living in the cottage, or do you think there's younger people who want to, just keep building the business and make a great company in Canada?
Yeah, I'm always like, because in March we're going to be 10 years old. I mean, that kind of shocks me, So I think if we were the cash out type of company, we'd have done that. There's been opportunities to do that, So I think that. Every time we feel like, every time I felt, oh my God, this is, feel a little exhausted, there's always seems like another mountain to climb, that seems like an exciting mountain. So I haven't run out of exciting mountains quite yet.
Okay, 2 more questions, or no? Last chance? No? No one? Okay, perfect. All right, well, thanks so much, Dax. You want to do yours first, or?
Sure.
Do
Okay.
that one
So
first?
we're just going to drop.